Okay, game three here, and we have a few choices on the board, right? There's some choices for draw, hunting party, rabble, wharf, some choices for trashing, forager, develop, and catapult. So my thoughts looking at the board was to build some kind of fortress wharf thing and use courtiers to gain gold and coins probably by revealing wharf. I think wharf is the only card with two types on it. I'm not sure, but there's no card with three types on it for sure. So that was my plan going into the game. So I already made up my mind to choose Wolf as my draw card. It's just a matter of what to choose for trash in here. Fortress, Develop, or Catapult. Now Develop isn't really great right now. Catapult is okay, it could be useful, right? Especially making them discard. But I do go for the Forager instead because Fortress is around and Forager will always be active once you have Fortress. There'll always be something for you to trash and get the benefit from. So I go Forager Silver against Forager Forager. Silver looking for Wharf early and I do get it early. Um, as my opponent picks up a Silver now on turn 4. So they'll probably get a Wharf on the next turn here. So this is going to be a Fortress for me. And one thing to notice on the board is that Fortress is your only source of plus actions. Only source of plus actions. Actually, here I'm thinking about between Fortress and another trashing card, and I definitely need another trashing card. Consider the Catapult, but chose the Forager because action, the amount of actions you could play is limited by how many fortresses you could get, and I don't anticipate getting more than 5 fortresses, so while the catapult would be nice to play, I feel like I would like to use my actions for wharves and courtiers rather than a catapult. I could get around the discard attack from the catapult and I could get around the junking from the catapult with these foragers around. So I felt like forager was the best thing to get there. And now I start to pick up fortresses where I can't pick up wharves. So you notice there that I actually trashed my necropolis, which is something to think about. I snap trashed it, right? It was one of those things that just replace your estates, you get rid of it. But perhaps more thought should have gone into that at that point in the game because, once again, actions are very precious, your most precious resource in this game, right? There's no shortage of draw or trashing, but there is a kind of shortage of actions. So perhaps the necropolis, keeping the necropolis would have been which at least should have been considered at that point in the game, just for the purpose of giving you 6 or 7 actions as opposed to 5 or 6 actions for the rest of the game. So I now purchase a fortress and a forager on 7-man 2 buys here. Could have been wharf or nothing, but I had quite a bit of wharves by this point in the game, and I decided to go for the develop at this point. Now the develop is a lot more useful porque we have fortresses in our deck. So we have fortresses on our deck, and you could develop the fortress into, I was thinking, Wharf Harbinger, or even Wharf Silver, or even Wharf Forager. And you could get lots of wharves that way, especially on mission turns. So mission starts to look a lot more profitable. My opponent goes for their first mission turn here. They have a developing deck, and they do manage to see it with a fortress. So they do pick up a wharf, and I believe a silver at this point. So that was the main target for the develops, right? Your fortresses, but there is also an additional target in the 3 costs. So you could develop your foragers, for example, into fortresses, and you'd have to take an estate as well. But you could also get fortresses with the develop, which is quite good. So my opponent develops his fortress into wharf and develop, and then develops one of his silvers into fortress and estates. So the estate isn't really a problem for him because he could clean it up, get some benefit from his foragers. Even he could develop that estate back into a silver at some point, right? So one thing that I so I recognized maybe at the start of this turn, but I didn't end up executing. It sort of slipped my mind. Is that the fortress pile is actually more relevant here than the wharf pile. Not necessarily because you have a shortage of actions, because the deck is very thin now. You don't need that many wharves to draw everything. like with 4 wolves here, I'm good enough to draw everything. I'm overdrawing by 2 or 3 cards here, and I'll be getting thinner with the foragers. So my draw is there's no problem with my draw is what I'm saying, right? So I should be concentrating on getting the foragers because of the potential with the develop. That is why. That is why. So if I have more fortresses, I can do more develop tricks, right? You would like to play, fortress, develop fortress, and then draw into whatever of your um of the developed gains, right? So potentially, okay, something like this could happen. You fortress, develop fortress into 5 course, like hunting party develop, right? So you get another develop. You could play a hunting party, draw into another fortress develop pair, and do that again, and then do that again, and run the develop pile down, as well as another 5 course pile, which could be wolves. And you get points on this board for having lots of cards from our action supply pile in tower. So what I'm saying is that we are very close to the end game, and develop coupled with mission gives you a lot of power, a lot of strength for the end game here. So for example here, I should have picked up at least 1 fortress of my develop here, if not another wolf or hunting party develop here and another fortress, but I didn't do that. I didn't do that. In fact, I ended up just going after the wolves more aggressively or with more intent than the fortresses, and that is not the right thing to do on the board. My opponent showed greater insight into how things work on this board and where the game would eventually go. The whole plan of getting goals with courtiers never came to light because the game finished far too quickly. So I did win the wolf split, but like I said, that is not the most important thing on the board. And from this point, actually, I didn't see it. Again, I have a problem with seeing 3 pile endings apparently, but my opponent actually has a win available to him here, and he goes for it, and he gets through with it. So um, you can have a look at it here. It involves all these developed tricks, right? He gained the last wolf, and now he'll develop his silver into fortress and estate, and he'll go through the whole process of developing fortress into 5 course, 3 course, and there's nice targets for that in hunting party and harbinger at the very least. At the very least. So this is how game 3 ends. Well played by my opponent. This is the second time since this new client I've lost to somebody doing fortress develop tricks, so maybe that's also something I need to keep an eye out for when I'm playing. So yes, very nicely done by my opponent here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.